This episode of This Agile Life has been brought to you by BrilliantAgile.com, providing Agile and Scrum training, consultancy, and personnel.
BrilliantAgile.com. Done right, it's brilliant.
Released on Sunday, November 20th, 2016. This Agile Life, episode 120. Two-person retro.
The software industry transforms more and more every day. Agile methods are quickly replacing traditional ones. The question is, are you agile enough? This podcast is devoted to agile and lean software development. Time to welcome your agile coaches on This Agile Life.
Hello, welcome to This Agile Life. This is Craig Buchek.
And this is Amos King. We're here in Cincinnati at Ruby Conf 2016.
And I gave a talk a couple days ago at the conference and wanted to do a little retrospective on it.
And we thought we would just share that with all of you too.
So my talk was a very technical thing about Ruby hooks, basically methods that run in Ruby implicitly when certain conditions happen. So it was a very technical talk. And it's my third talk at Ruby Conference, at Ruby Conf, and I think it's my fourth conference talk. And I was a little disappointed in myself, I'd have to say. And I'd probably give myself a C+ on this. And my previous two, I'd give myself a B and an A-. So I wanted to talk about why I'm kind of disappointed in myself and why I think I could have done better and how I can do better next time.
Okay. And I was kind of involved in some of this process of looking at your slides, and you gave a practice talk of it about a month ago too. So I just thought that little bit of background, that there was some involvement. Yeah.
So I gave a practice run. So I wrote the slides and gave a practice run almost exactly a month before I gave the actual talk. So that was at our local Ruby users group. And there was a lot of feedback during the talk at the local group.
In the middle of the talk.
In the middle of the talk, yeah.
I think that that, in my opinion, in watching that and then your later slides and everything, is that although that is good, I don't know that you can use that for your practice of your talk.
Yeah, so my main practice of the talk was immediately before the talk itself, the live talk. So the immediate problem was that the talk ran really short, like only half the time allocated. Now, a lot of the talks at this conference ran short. We had 45-minute slots, and a lot of the talks ran about 25 or 30 minutes. And mine ran a little under 20 minutes, actually. So that was the first thing that I realized was kind of a problem. Made me look a little foolish, maybe. That's probably not quite right.
I don't think that's a fair assessment. I talked to a lot of people after your talk, about your talk, and I think that, and I didn't tell them that I even knew you, so I think I got some honest feedback, and people said, it was a great talk, it was just short.
Yeah.
I wanted more.
So, yeah, and so the thing is, I had time for more, and there's things I could have and should have put in. I should have put in more examples, basically. That was probably my main thing that was missing, was more and better examples of each of my points I did. So I talked to a few people also that gave me feedback, and they said it was fine.
Why do you think you went so short? Were you nervous and talked fast?
That's always the case with me. Oddly, normally I run long. I usually have so much material that I'm up against the time box. So there's two reasons, or three reasons really. One is when I gave the talk at the local group, the feedback and the back and forth of that feedback, it was more of a conversation. So that took like an hour or more. And so, I didn't really take that into account when I, built up the second version for the conference. Another part is that I always do talk faster when I'm nervous, and I'm nervous in front of a bigger crowd. And this crowd was over 100 people. It was probably close to 150.
Do you think that
the other thing was just not practicing it until the day of, working too close to the deadline. You know, I procrastinate a lot, and that bit me more than it usually does.
Do you think if the practice at the Ruby group had not been as much of a conversation, that you might have been better on your timeline? Like, known that you needed to work on that?
I think so, but I don't really like to do that at local user groups. I'd like to have that conversation at local user groups.
During your talk? Then?
During the talk, yeah.
Okay.
So I actually was going to, at the last minute, I did put in my talk notes that I wanted to tell people to ask questions during, but I chickened out. So that's I don't know if I can solve that problem, or if I probably should have actually asked for questions during, but I don't know if I was prepared enough to answer questions to provide better examples. I really should have done some more research to find better examples and explain why.
Do you think that your past experiences of running up against the time caused you to maybe back off? Like, were you nervous that you were going to run over, and so...
No, well, maybe a little bit, because, like I said, it ran over an hour at the local group. So usually when I write a talk, I actually have it so it can be expanded or contracted a little bit. So basically there's optional slides at the end that I can skip over or gloss over. And I didn't do any of that. I guess yes and no on that. I think my main disappointment is that I should be getting better each time I give a talk. And in this one, I felt that I didn't get better than the last time. I think that's my main disappointment. And I understand that I'm hard on myself, self-critical. And I talked to people that said it was good. Cheryl, a friend of ours that was at the conference, she sat in and said it was fine, and that I was being overly critical. But I really do want to get better every time I give a talk. And in fact, there were some things I did better than the last few times.
So what did you do better?
I did have more pictures in the slides.
I will say, from seeing your slides in the past, I frequently like slides that are just a couple words, or just some code.
I've improved that actually too.
But I actually like that you pulled back on the words a little bit.
I did,
and made them just have a couple words instead of like everything you're saying.
Yeah.
But your pictures were well placed. There weren't too many. There weren't too few.
They were just add-ons, basically, and a little bit humorous.
Yeah.
It was about hooks, and you can't illustrate hooks literally the way that Ruby hooks are. But I had Captain Hook on the title page. I had a fishing hook on the what is a hook page, and at the end I had a person being pulled off the stage with a hook. So that was the end page, which is kind of funny. My wife always says, "Get the hook," like when you need to go, get the hook. So I did use. So I mean, this talk was very technical, so it wasn't really conducive to a lot of graphics or pictures. I could have used one diagram. We'd actually talked about that, about how Ruby's inheritance works, and I should have done that. But I did do better with the pictures. I did better with the fewer words per slide. One thing, and after my talk, I paid more attention to how other people did talks. If they were strongly technical, there was a lot of code on the screen. One thing I didn't do is they would point out or circle a line or, highlight a line as they were talking about it. And you had mentioned, Amos, when I gave my run through right before the talk, that I should try to add line numbers, and we couldn't figure out how to add line numbers in the software I'm using.
And that is more for recording. Like you used a laser pointer, which I think works. I do like highlighting the lines better.
Interestingly, I did not use the highlighter in the actual talk, which sped me up some more from not slowing down to point things out.
But I really suggested line numbers for people who watch the recording and the talk later. But
so that's one of my takeaways here, and I've taken some notes already, and I'll take some more notes. Basically, I'm going to put line numbers on all code I'm going to do going forward from this point.
So I see a lot of people that do. They have a highlight, either a highlighted line for what they were talking about, or like subdued background, or a subdued background on the lines they're not talking about. Instead of highlighting, they like show everything normal and then
low light or
low light something. Or I've also seen where the code will be like partial there. It'll only show the line that you're talking about.
One of the guys did something where he had 20 lines of code, and then he grabbed out 2 lines and talked about that on a page, and then he grabbed another 2 lines and talked about the 2 lines at a time, and then kind of went back to the 20 lines to show it back together.
So that could be a good way too.
Yeah,
it could depend. I think that will depend on how much code you're showing.
If
it's not very long, you probably get away with a highlight or a low light.
Yeah.
But if you have a big giant piece of code, you probably do need that, pull it out to its own slide.
Yeah, and I think I have done that. In that there wasn't actually, I did break some slides into 3 slides when I had more than one topic sort of on a slide. One was I broke the code into 2 pieces, and then actually showed a third slide with sort of explaining how that code worked. So I kind of did pretty well on that, I think. So things that I had kind of done last time better and did almost okay this time, asking the audience some questions at the beginning. I did really well last year on that. And I did moderately okay this year on who's using this? Have you guys seen this before? I don't think I asked it as well this time, and I don't quite understand how I did it differently. I didn't have really any humor in this one except for a picture of my cat, and I probably ran through that joke so fast that barely got even a slight laugh. I struggled to figure out if I should... So I've heard people say you should introduce yourself at the beginning of the talk and explain why you're the expert in it or why you're qualified to talk about it. But then I've heard the opposite advice that nobody cares who you are, just put that stuff at the end. So I had it at the end, then I moved it at the beginning. But I did put pictures, and I've forgotten this. I think I did a lightning talk last year, and I think I forgot to say, oh, hey, and I do this Agile Life podcast. Oh, and this is my company. So I did better with that. I did mention the podcast. I mentioned my company. I mentioned some other companies I'm affiliated with. I put the St. Louis. Probably went over that pretty quick. I don't. What do you think about how much time I should spend on more about myself and where I'm coming from, and B, pimping my company?
I think that you can separate these two things. So the upfront, you can say, here, I've been doing Ruby for 10 years, and I find hooks to be pretty useful, and I've used them quite a bit, and that would be enough to explain why. And here's my name. Because I like to know the speaker's name, even though it's on the schedule. I still like to hear, especially speakers that are from a different country.
How they pronounce their name.
I want to hear them say it, and we have people here from other countries that might not know how to pronounce your name.
That's a good one.
So I like to get that up front, but then by the way, I do a podcast, blah, blah, blah. Put that at the very end of the talk.
Okay.
So split that, I think, is a good idea.
So one thing I have done better, and I think I did this last year as well. So the software I kind of hacked away to put in a little something in each corner of the screen. So I've got my Twitter account on every slide at the bottom left. In the upper left, I think I had Ruby Conf 2016. I think I had the date in the upper right, and I don't remember what I had in the bottom right.
Why the date?
Because I'm an engineer. and I write it in ISO format as well. So just something I do. Partly though because I do sometimes give the same talk more than once, and it's slightly different.
Did you? So you generate your slides dynamically. So through like some HTML, right?
Actually, it's Markdown, but I can.
Okay,
it's a web page, right? Yeah, it gets converted to HTML, and I can do CSS.
So if you were going to give this talk, is there a way that you can inject like that date there? If you're going to keep it there, so if you gave this again, it would always be up there.
I wouldn't want to do that because I would want to have the modification date, not the. Well, yeah, I see what you're saying. I guess if someone was looking at it later, I wouldn't want them to see the date that they're looking at it. I'd want them to see the date that I last updated it.
Okay. So you put it there as almost like a versioning thing.
Yes.
So I thought you were putting it there so that when you go back and watch the recording, you would see the date on that recording easily.
So I think you're making a point that the date is not very useful. It does.
Well, I don't know if it is, but
yeah. It does round out and give me 4 corners of information instead of 3, which would look a little weird.
You could put my picture in the other corner. That'd be fine.
A picture would be a bit large, actually.
Have you seen me? I'm not that big.
Oh, the 4th corner is, in the lower right is what page you're on and how many pages there are. So they can tell how far, roughly, I am into the presentation.
I like and dislike that when I see that on a slide. Sometimes it causes me, when we get toward the end, I start to feel very antsy. Like, all right, we're almost there. And then I don't pay attention as well. And I start watching that number.
That's interesting. But to be fair, though, the last couple slides are, one is the feedback page, like my contact info, Twitter, GitHub, email, a place to find the slides. And then the page before that is just thanks. So the last 2 pages are basically
maybe not
or
too
3
bad.
pages are
but yeah, that
content free.
But some people, like, how many slides did you have?
Only 24.
Okay, so some of the slide, like, people I see, they have like 100 slides. So at like slide 80, I kind of start focusing on we're almost there instead of there's a little bit to a talk that I like to be surprised, like, oh, now we're here.
So I get your point, and I think my slides are always going to be under 50, whereas because I'm not clicking through pictures and stuff like that, at least not in these technical type. I actually am hoping to do one that's more about pictures and just talking about, having a few words instead of some code on the page.
That'd be neat. I guess to me, I look at like a talk is a lot like a story, and I guess your slides are a lot like a book, right? And you have page numbers on them. But when somebody's telling me a story, I want them to take me along, and I don't necessarily want to know that the end is coming. Like, I'll let them tell me when the end is there.
So that was actually another shortcoming in this talk, was I didn't really tell a story. I didn't have a story to tell. I mentioned that to Cheryl, and she said that, if the talk is technical enough, you really don't need to tell a story all the time. And I think I don't know how I would have found a story in this particular topic. Maybe the story of a few little short stories of how I came across individual hooks or where they were useful. I probably should have told little short stories about each individual hook.
Yeah, I think that would be good, and probably would have extended your time.
Yeah.
And really, if you separated your slides out even more to where you were like had one hook on a slide.
That was the case, actually.
You had the previous slides that said, here's the next ones I'm talking about. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I remembered. But yeah, I think that helps. I don't really like slides that much, but when I have used them, I try to have enough slides that I have about a slide for every minute that I want to talk.
That's probably about what I hit.
Minimum.
But so, when I was not as good, when I was less experienced at writing conference style slides and more local user group slides, I was bad about lots of words and bullet points on the slide. Typical PowerPoint crap.
Like the military.
Which, I'll get back to that. Bring up the military in a minute.
Okay.
And those are dense slides, and they take a lot of time to get through. If there's 6 bullet points, you're not going to get through 6 bullet points in 1 minute. And so I think that was part of my problem, too, that I'm used to having 24 slides with 6 bullet points each, and that's going to take 45 minutes. But 24 slides with, 2 bullet points is not going to take that time. So I think that's another reason why.
Unless you throw the anecdotes.
I underestimated. No, I've even got the anecdotes in there on
I thought
some
you
of
were
these.
saying you need
Some of these.
Okay, not on all of them.
Yeah, and I guess I needed more anecdotes and stories behind them.
You could have had me come in and heckle you, and we could have had it just like at the Ruby Conf.
It would have been more. Yeah, it would have taken more. The military. The military is good at telling you what they're going to tell you, telling you, and then telling you what they just told you. I didn't have a summary.
You did not have a summary?
I did not have a summary. That was probably one of the bigger mistakes.
Yeah, like a slide with a list of all of the different hooks.
Yeah.
And like a plain list is not always great, but you could like group them.
Yeah.
Here's all the ones in class. Here's all the ones in module.
And actually, probably I should have put compiled a complete list and just had a link to that complete list. Or I don't think the complete list exists of them, and I meant to create my own and provided a link to that.
Oh, you still can. I
can. In fact, I gave them a link to the my presentations page. So
you can put it there. You can tweet about it.
Yeah.
When you get it up.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Because there are people that went there, even though it was short. There are probably some people that are going to follow you.
Yeah. I've had a couple already.
And so if you put out a little more about this, you might be able to make yourself feel a little better because you've given more. Because I feel, to me, in talking to you, and tell me if I'm wrong, it seems like you felt like you needed to give more to the people.
Yes.
And so you can still do that.
And I thought, first I thought, well, this was almost embarrassing. I'm like, no, that's not the right word. A little disappointed in myself and that's mostly not having improved. I didn't feel like this was better than last time. But I felt like I let people down a little bit by not providing the examples that I should have. And I think the shortness of it was sort of more of a symptom of not providing those examples, just putting it in my face. But yeah, I think part of this retrospective is figuring out how I can make it better. Not only, like you said, I could actually update this tonight, tomorrow, tweet about it, put it up on that page, make some improvements to it. But also improve my process on how I make slides next year or next conference. So I can actually do some of that work up front, like figure out how to do line numbers, figure out how to do color coding, highlighting a current line.
Well, we did have that suggestion like 10 minutes before you were supposed to talk.
Yeah.
So, my only thing is that until right before you didn't really practice conference style.
Yes.
So even though you like to give it at the group and have the feedback during,
I need to do more practice. And I did more run throughs last year too, on the one that I give myself an A- on. I did at least 2 run-throughs in my hotel room, like more than the night before. And
you sat in the room with me.
And then once in your hotel room with you. And that was also a mistake that I learned from, that because you gave me 2 pages of notes the night before, which was way too much to account for. But it did actually contribute greatly to the quality of that presentation.
Well, and I don't think that you have to take all the note feedback.
True, and I could, but still, I'd like to at least consider each point, and I didn't even have time to consider each point.
Yeah, that's understandable. Well, it was very late the night before, too.
Yeah. So that's most of it. I do want to talk about my nervousness. So the first year I gave a conference talk, I was very nervous and had to take some Xanax, which normally would put me to sleep, but when I'm excited, it's okay. Last year I was pretty nervous, but made it without Xanax, and this year I also made it without Xanax. So the nervousness really isn't going away. I actually asked Aaron Patterson, does the nervousness ever go away? Because I know he's nervous up there. He talks, a lot every conference. He gives a keynote every RailsConf. He says, no, it doesn't really ever go away. He says the butterflies don't go away; they just fly in formation eventually.
That is
someone told him that actually.
Nice.
I'd like giving the talk. Actually, the nervousness stops as soon as I start. So, except for, I guess, the amount of how fast I talk, which... but I don't feel scared. I guess until I get up there, I'm sort of scared almost. It's a nervousness. It's actually a fear. But once I get started, I'm fine.
So,
as far as that fear type nervousness.
So what would you say to somebody who has an idea to speak but really feels like they couldn't, they're too nervous, and so they don't
work through it, do it anyway?
Is there any pointers on how to do that?
I've got very little. So this is a common, I've seen this commonly stated, that the conference talk process is a roller coaster for almost everyone that does it. They open for call for proposals, and you get excited, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna put a thing in there, and I'll put a proposal in. Oh, I'm so excited about this talk. That's great. I'm so excited. I put it in, and then you get accepted, and you're like, oh crap, now I gotta write the actual talk. And then you're like, okay, it takes a lot of time, and you gotta practice, and I get feedback, and lots of time spent writing it. And then you get to before it, you're getting really nervous, and then you give the talk and you feel great afterwards. And that's true for me. Like, all that's pretty much true for me. And so these are common experiences. And it's almost like I love giving the talk. I probably love having given the talk a little more than that, but the preparation and the nervousness and that part it kind of sucks. But then you finish, and then you're like, all right, let's start this cycle over again.
One more time.
Yeah, it's almost
so
like
horrible. I need to do it again.
Yes, I guess because there's a psychological thing that where the end of any experience, your feelings at the end of an experience are what you remember most. So ending on a high note is actually a psychological benefit to thinking that whole experience was a good thing.
Oh.
They've actually done experiments with like surgery. Like, if you were in pain throughout your whole surgery except for the last 10 minutes, you'll think the surgery was fine. But if you were in pain only the last 10 minutes, you'll think the surgery was terrible.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And the Novocaine always wears off at the end.
Not if you have a good anesthesiologist, I
Just
suppose.
kidding. So if you could talk to yourself the night before or the day before, morning before, what would you tell yourself that you need to do at that, let's say the morning of the talk? Because you don't have a lot of time. What would you tell yourself? What do you need to do to make yourself feel better about how far you got?
Answer one. not have procrastinated.
Well, no.
Two, learn how to meditate from Tice.
Learn how to meditate. So those two things you think would...
Those would actually probably help me, but I don't know. Those are both things that I don't know how. I think the fact that I feel that this one wasn't as good as the last one will help me not procrastinate for the next one. Like, that pain's a bit of a strong word, but those feelings will help me to not procrastinate as much next time.
Okay, I have one more. Now, if you could talk to you the night after you gave the practice talk, before, at the local group, what would you tell yourself then?
Make the changes right away on the feedback I got. That was because I forgot some of the feedback, and do a practice run in front of the mirror, by myself on the updates. So, yeah. There was one other thing that I thought about, and that was how I picked the topic. So, I submitted 3 proposals for this conference, but I actually had like 10 ideas, 10, titles and ideas. And I actually sat down with you, Amos, and I explained each one and had you rate each one to see which ones you thought were good and would get accepted. That had its pros, but it had a serious con. I don't think I was that excited about this talk.
Oh.
I picked it because it sounded like it was a good topic, but I don't think I was excited about it as much as some of the other topics. And I think that had a big impact too. This is something I could talk about and was able to talk about, but I wasn't as excited about it as I was the last 2.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably another big influence on why this one I didn't feel was as good. So I've got some work to do. I've got some action items, like figure out the line numbers, figure out how to use my software that I'm building the slides for better. And in fact, they opened a call for proposals for Ruby Conf today. So back into the cycle. But I've got some work to do. And I will actually start on that this weekend, I think.
And maybe give some of that feedback back online that we talked about give out to the community. Because I think that'll help you.
All right.
At least psychologically.
Yeah. And doing the retro actually does help me as well. So, knowing that you're going to do better next time, hopefully, is one way to sort of serve a penance for feeling like you didn't do better this time.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your facilitating my retrospective again.
No problem.
And I think that's been helpful to me, and hopefully the listeners find some usefulness in learning how to do an introspective one-person retrospective with a facilitator.
And hopefully they learn a little bit about facilitating those too. I try to sit back and be quiet, and there were a few times that I made suggestions, but ask a lot of questions, more than I did, and I think that helps.
No, I think this is a good example of a facilitation.
All right. Well, thanks for the talk. I personally thought it was really good.
Thanks for your feedback.
And we'll see you guys next time.
This Agile Life is brought to you by a community of Agile developers and coaches aspiring to spread the word about this groundbreaking approach to software development. Join us at thisagilelife.com/community.